Welcome to today's episode where I'm chatting with Chris Penman, an entrepreneur and structural engineer. Welcome to today's episode, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on. Today's going to be a wee bit different than what I'm used to interviewees having on the show, because we're not speaking so much about health per se. Speaking about your background, your career and your experience really from becoming qualified in structural engineering to being an entrepreneur to a general sort of legend. That's how I would describe you. The first time that I met you was maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And my mind was blown. We had literally like 10 minutes where we were talking, brief discussion. And I thought, this guy, there's more to this guy than meets the eye. And then the next time that I met you after that was a few months later, and you'd shown me a microchip in your hand.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, I need to know more about this guy. And then over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, the more that I've got to speak to you, the more that I've learned about you. And it's really fascinating. So I think if I feel inspired about it, other people will. So yeah, just talk me through your experience up until now, really.
Yeah, well, the chip in the hand it's a payment chip. Right? I have two chips in my hands. One's a payment chip, another one that lets me store near-field contact information. So when you're trying to get in your office, you put a little plastic card up against the door. It'll ping a code and the door will open. I can copy those codes onto the thing that's in my hand. I can copy 12 of them so I can get it in my car, in my office or my house or whatever. And the payment chip was literally just to see if I could pay using something other than a bank card. And at that point, it was just at the start of COVID, and I got somebody to make the chip for me, somebody in America to coat it in surgical silicone. And then when it came over here, I got some tattoo artist in Edinburgh to go away and implant it in my hand. And it worked great. And then all the COVID propaganda was all about you're going to get chipped and the government will be tracking you. And I was like, shit, now I can't sell this thing because like nobody's going to want it. So I don't know anybody else that has it, but it's super cool when you're in the pub because you can go to the pub without your phone, without your bank card and just get drunk. And then get in your house because the other key gets me in my house.
God. The bionic man.
But that was just literally to see, could I do this? Can I make it in a product? The answer is no, you can't make it in a product because nobody wants to be tracked.
Yeah, I know. Probably before pre-COVID, it probably would have taken off.
It might have taken off, I don't know. But you can get, other people sell, like, you can get like 0.5 terabyte of information stored inside your arm so that you can go to a computer and download information like Johnny Mnemonic. So that you can actually have your hard drive and all your important information on your body. Which isn't, it's a bit sci-fi, it's a little bit weird. But there's a website called dangerousthings.com in America. And there's a whole load of biohackers that all converge in this dude's house with all the little weird things that they've done to themselves. I'd love to go at some point just to see what's possible. But it's just people cutting lumps at themselves, just putting stuff in, see what happens.
This doesn't sound like fun to me, but
I like the idea of seeing what you can do. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the same with the human body, just seeing what you can do with the human body. You've got, I don't know if you know about this, but the anabolic games coming up next year, where performance-enhancing drug-enhanced athletes are going to compete.
Right.
It's televised. It was like, if you Google it, it's a big thing. There's like loads of people who are leaving the normal Olympics to jack up to then go and compete, because then they have to be clean for 3 years or something before they can go back to the normal Olympics. Right, so you're going to end up with all these size monsters doing track and field events and things like that, just to see just exactly how far you can push the human body with drugs.
Whoa.
Right, and they'll post their, like, what they're injecting, what their regime is, what their diet is and stuff like that, so everybody can see who's on what and what they're doing. It's like, I can't wait.
My God. Awesome. So where is this going to take place?
America. Where else would
Oh,
it take
of course.
place?
Oh, come on. how I should have known. So I wonder what the sort of legal requirements and the insurance are for that. Is it just every man for himself?
I think so. I've not looked at that bit of it. I listened to a podcast, I think it was Joe Rogan talking about it,
right,
with one of the founders. It just sounds fucking fascinating, right?
Oh my God.
Because who knows where it could go? You know, we've already got, I don't want to go in the trans kind of thing, but we've already got guys competing in women's events in the Olympics, right? One of my friends is trans, right? And she's went from being a girl to being a guy and is much, much happier as a guy, right? And I've sponsored her, so a motorbike racer. So I sponsored her when she was a girl, and I've now sponsored her much longer as a guy. She's much, much, much happier as a guy, right?
What about her reaction rates then as a guy with the testosterone and stuff?
She's a lot more aggressive as a guy, but also physiologically, her weight distribution's changed.
Right.
So there was about a season when she was slower on the bike, or he was slower on the bike, because all the weight went down to his legs and not so much on the upper body. So the way he had to ride the bike was different from the way she had to ride the bike. But also the testosterone was giving him a lot more aggression when he was on the bike. So it was quite interesting to watch the difference as grown adults, regardless of what gender you are or what sex you are, or whatever, and let's just see what we can actually do with the human body.
So in these sort of events then, is it men and women competing in the same events?
I actually can't remember, to be honest.
Because that would be interesting, but obviously, you know, men are going to supersede, they're going to exceed the women's strength and things. But like you say, it might not. It might be quite mixed.
I suppose it depends on what the event is. I don't know what events have been listed as. No, I would imagine wrestling might be out, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it might be fun for a while, but if you've got 225 stone guys who are like they're going to rip themselves to bits, that's not going to be... So I'll be interested to see what the list of actual events are, you know?
I'm just picturing naked wrestling. I don't know what, that's taking it too far and it's taking it in another direction. Let's maybe move on a little bit.
From people's junk, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I took that off at a bit of a tangent. But I think that kind of thing, again, it's interesting to see what... We're all grown-ups, right? And for some reason, there's a whole load of things you're not allowed to do with your body, or other people think they have the right to have a view on, right? I don't care if somebody's transsexual or not, as long as it doesn't impact me.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? You can do whatever the hell you want with your body. It's your body. Just, but, you know, don't get offended if I see a guy that's dressed like if you're trying to be a woman and I misgender you, that's because you're shite at makeup. That's not because I did it on purpose. Yeah. Right. And also I'm from a generation of people who were brought up to say sir and ma'am and like, you know, not dude. You know, it's like...
Well, I guess probably with that, I mean, I'm probably not far off of your generation, but...
Yeah, I'm 52, so like... It was rude to go away and not say certain kind of titles, if you like.
Yeah, so I think the kind of cultural norms have changed with what's accepted, what's really not accepted, and I think it's that pushing that onto other people. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about the whole gender, transgenderism. I think just in general, the younger generation seem to be in a bubble. I don't know, like my son's 21 and I mean, I've brought him up to be quite, you know, respectful and probably accepting of other people. But I would say the generation after that, they seem to be...
Not so much.
They just don't have a clue, and it's the expectations, like even in work, in the workforce. And we'll move on to this as well, because I know that you've written quite a lot of books, and one of them is on the woke agenda in the workplace, and that was really interesting when I read about the synopsis of your book on that. But I think just going back to the generational things of what's accepted and what changes throughout the times, I think it's just get a bit mad. It's get a bit out of control.
Yeah.
And where does it stop? So.
I think the climate that we're in at the moment is... I think I'm quite fortunate as well, because I'm Gen X, whatever that group of people is. But more importantly, I was raised, and computers came in a little bit later, right? I was in my late teens when computers came in, and there wasn't Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. So you compared yourself with your relatives, your friends, and the people in your street, right? So whether you were well off or weren't well off, you were in that little bubble of everybody having round about the same car, round about the same house, everybody went on the same kind of holidays. So, you'd never ever felt poor.
Yeah.
In relation to the people that you knew. You were like in the middle, maybe you're a little bit better off than so-and-so, but you were in that kind of range. Whereas now, people look at Instagram, look at all the bullshit on Facebook, and everybody's in a big, massive race to get themselves into debt to look rich.
Yes.
Right? With the end result that nobody's looking to the future when your government pension is going to be terrible. You didn't bother putting anything away in your own pension because, well, this is never going to end.
Yeah, it's a fast life.
Nobody's going to end up owning anything because it's getting harder and harder and harder to get a mortgage. You don't own your car, you lease your car. Right? So people in 20 years' time are going to have no assets to finance their older age because they've spent all their time looking cool to people they don't know.
Oh my God.
On the internet. And that's just the way that the whole culture seems to have morphed into this weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know I don't even know how to fix it. Right? How do you fix what's happening at the moment? It's a nightmare. And now we've got people who are getting almost forced into accepting 4-day working weeks off their staff because their staff are like, I deserve to have a 3-day working weekend. And you're like, well, how am I as a business owner supposed to finance that if you don't want to work longer hours? Because I was sitting, I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and we were sitting in the baths, and there was somebody who was there on the Zoom call, right? Our kid was in the baths as well. She's working, right? And you could hear her not that far away from me, and she's like, look, I'm going to have to cut the video link at the moment because the internet in here is really, really slow in the house at the moment. Right, and she's like, oh, they all think I'm working from home, right? And she's doing this fucking Zoom thing from the public baths, watching her kid, right? The background was all blurred so you couldn't see, but obviously you could still hear. And now she's put a microphone on so you can only hear her voice, not the giggles of people splashing in the background. You're like, you're actually getting paid to be at the public pool with your kid. And I know people who are doing 2 full-time jobs now, right, with 2 different laptops because you can, right? You just be shite at both jobs.
Yes.
Right? But you'll get 2 salaries coming in. And unless your employer can, like if you've been there for longer than 18 months, it's quite difficult to get rid of somebody, right? You have to start a disciplinary process to get rid of the guy who's doing 2 jobs, right? So how do you monitor that? You know, I know one of my mates has installed a software on all these computers doing keystrokes and seeing when people are actually at their computer, right? But as an employer, how do you stop your employee having a secondary full-time job because they're working from home? Because everybody feels as though it's the right to work from home now. And they're still probably getting paid for travelling in and out of work, right? Because when COVID happened, everybody got furloughed. Nobody lost the kind of travel allowance part of the wage, if you like.
Right.
So when people then started to come back to work, they're like, well, the trains have went up. You're going to have to pay me an extra £200 a month so I can get my train ticket. And you're like, well, it's kind of your job to get into work. You know, that's not my business. That's how you get into work. You get a bike, put a bike, take a car, carpool, whatever, as long as you're here. And then the backlash was that basically nobody wants to come into the office full time now.
Definitely.
So most places are working from home or working from home part-time, which is why a lot of the offices in Glasgow City Centre are becoming flats and things like that.
Yeah.
Or the rates are going up because the council still needs the income. It's madness.
Yeah, I know, I've noticed that as well because I spoke to quite a lot of business owners who struggle to find staff.
Yeah, that want to come into the office. Cause
not just that, even like, in fact, there was one couple who owned a cleaning company. They said, you know, it's quite high profile, like homes and things in business offices. They were given a company car to one of whoever was employed. No interest, £20 an hour, car, like. I mean, come on. And it's that, I think it's going back to that sort of, maybe not generational at that point, because COVID does have a lot to answer for, but it's like, right, okay, it's quite a good hourly rate. You know, maybe if you're taking care of your own tax, then it's not as good, but a car, good working hours, a job, security, like people don't want it. They don't want it. And it's like that kind of work shy, even like you're saying, having 2 full-time jobs, fair enough, people can do it. I mean, it's doable, but what's the quality of the output?
Rubbish.
Shit.
It's going to be not good.
You know, and who would want to employ someone like that? I would not. I'm a different kind of person, but I wouldn't put myself on the line if I couldn't give 100%.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you're showing yourself up, but it's greed as well.
Aye.
You know?
But a lot of people at the moment, the folk that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis, the work that I'm getting, or like the information I'm getting from people, a lot of them, you'll ask them a simple, you send them an email saying, here's a yes or no answer, and instead of getting a yes or no answer, you get an email back with another question, because they're trying to make it spin on as much as possible. So every job that's on their desk needs to last the maximum amount of time, right? Or you get a drawing in, because I'm a structural engineer, I get lots of drawings in, and the drawing will be shockingly bad, or will be missing out obvious things to prompt you to see, to send an email saying, can you give me a detail for this? Oh, I can do that in the book, right? But it would have just been a standard copy-paste thing that they would have just normally put in the drawing anyway. A few years ago, it would have just been there. Now it's not there to prompt you to ask for it to be put on.
Oh, wow.
Because everybody's spinning things out a little bit. And as somebody who works for myself, I just need all the information so I can do the job, get it done, invoice it, boom, on the next one.
Yeah.
So when you're working with a member of staff who's a salaried member of staff who's just trying to spin things out, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you're just playing a game with me, mate. Gotta just give me the information so I can get paid and not talk to you again.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of difference though between people who are, like we spoke about this earlier, about people who are employed who just see it as a job, it's a means to an end. They go there Monday, Friday, 9-5, they've got their weekends. It's a certain type of mindset. And I had a conversation with one of my friends who, she's recently changed job in the last year. She had quite a long time in the police, and then she changed career path and ended up working in this big sort of, I think, more pensions, finance kind of pensions.
Yep.
And she can't believe the number of meetings that's scheduled for every single day, every single week, for nothing. There's no purpose. There's no reason for everyone to be there.
Yeah.
And that's something that I never really understood when I was employed myself. Like, don't invite me to a meeting if there's not going to be anything actioned. Like, I'm such a stickler for time with things like that. Like, it's a total waste of time, and it's people talking themselves and keeping themselves in jobs that, do they really need to be there? Could I maybe do your work and get paid double? Yeah. I just can't understand the mentality of some people.
It's just people who are, I think, fearful for their job. As long as they can show that, like the people at the moment who are working from home, right? They are trying to show, look at all the emails I'm sending, right? I'm working really, really hard on your job, right? But you can schedule emails, right? I used to do, actually, this is really bad, right? I worked for a multinational company, and it was before emails and things like that, right? So it was just faxes, right? And I would pay the cleaner to send a fax at 7 o'clock in the morning for me. And I would pay the night watchman to send a fax at about 9 o'clock at night for me. And my boss thought I was killing it, right? Because I'm there for 7 in the morning, still there at 9 o'clock at night. I'd fucked off at 5, right? And I didn't turn up until the back of 9. But on paper, I was working, and everybody that was getting these emails, well, not emails, faxes and things, were like, Chris is working hard. I got promoted because of the amount of work I was doing, right? And
you liar.
all I was doing was just, the little cleaner was getting like £5 extra a week for going away and just sending stuff, not at the same time, just running about a 15-minute window, right? And she's like, don't bother, son. Okay. And the same with the night guy, he's quite happy, right? But I literally got I got a pay rise and a promotion because it looked like I was there all the time. I fucking wasn't, right? But that's pretty much what people are doing at the moment. They're scheduling emails to go out for after the work's finished, and they're replying to emails that they could have just said yes or no, but what about this, right? To spin it out so that they can justify to the boss that, look, I'm always working. I'm always working. So you're not getting any loss of productivity with me working from home, even though I'm in the swimming pool at the moment with my son.
Yeah.
Right? It's just everybody's just playing a big game. But
Yeah.
at some point, somebody's going to click onto the fact that we're losing money doing this. You know, because I've went from having 7 staff to basically just being myself, and I did that by realising that I was spending most of my time bringing in work to pay 7 people's mortgages, and then at the end of the month I wasn't paying mine because all the money I was bringing in was going to these guys, and then I didn't have anything really left for me.
Yeah.
So you start to look at the business in a kind of a different way, where you're like, right, there's all your staff, right? It costs on average about 1.5 times the salary to have them sitting at the desk, right? Because you've got a computer and program and insurance and pensions and mobile phones and stuff like that. So 1.5 to 2 times whatever their salary is, which means that somebody who's on £60,000, you probably need about £90,000 worth of work just to have them sitting there making no money for you.
For that one person.
For that one person. So I need to find £90,000 worth of work to make fuck all for myself. Right? So if I can bring in £100,000 worth of work, I've made 10 grand off that person. Or I could just bring in £10,000 worth of work and do it myself, and not have the hassle of all the paperwork having that person.
That's it, because you're going to be making the 10 grand anyway.
Yeah. So you look at it and you're like, so what's better for me? Well, I'll just do the 10 grand then, because it takes less time to do the 10 grand and find only 10 grand than it does to find £100,000 to get the 10 grand.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So that gives me more time to go away and find more work for me to do, or just sit and play with my daughter and do stuff like that and have actual family time.
Yeah.
You know?
So just going to touch on that then, you started out as a structural engineer.
Yep.
So what was your progress then, your process to start that career path and then to change it from being employed? I would imagine you were employed to gain your time and your experience and things, then to move on to actually working for yourself.
Yeah, well, I started off being an engineer because my dad was a techie teacher and a maths teacher. So when I was little, my dad would do get extra tuition for people who were failing their exams. So these people would come into the house, sit in the dining room, and because you're a little kid, you want to do what your dad's doing, he'd give you a little maths problem, a little drawing that's similar to what they're doing, and you would learn maths and techie drawing, and it was just easy, right? I really struggled at English. I failed my higher English and had to stay on in 6th year to do my higher English again, which was ridiculous because I've sold 21 books now, right? But I literally failed English twice, or I failed English and then had to resit it. But maths and drawing were easy, right? So it made sense for me to go and do an engineering degree, and then you go and you become a graduate engineer in a company, and the only way to get more money is by bouncing about, which is why I've got 7 pensions. Right. With 7 company pensions, they're all over the place. And then I got made redundant, and thought, right, okay, and I now need to try and do this myself, because it was the start of the year, and I thought, I'm now competing against other people who've also been made redundant. Been made redundant twice, right? At one point, they just shut the whole office. Right, the second time, that's when I decided to just do it myself,
right?
Because I was basically going to be competing against about 40 people for about 4 jobs in Glasgow, you know. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. Let's just do stuff myself. So I teamed up with an architect, and we set up an architectural engineering practice, and that was a great idea because she knew about the finances of running the business. I could do the engineering stuff, but also meant we got 2 fees per client. Right? So we've got an architectural fee and then an engineering fee, so it smoothed out the cash flow, and we did that for 4 or 5 years as a partnership. And then that company vanished along with all the money from it. And then I started up myself just as an engineer. Again, just basically with the clients from the partnership that were at a stage where they just needed engineering stuff done. So I did that, and then you start emailing other architects saying, look, I can do your engineering stuff. And what I found was that if I went to an architect And having been in an architectural practice, I understood that the architect didn't get paid until the building warrant was completed. So he needed an engineer that could do his stuff quickly, not somebody that took 2 months to do it, because he'd finished his job, or she'd finished the job, but we're now waiting for the engineer to do their job, right? So what I say was, look, I'll do the job within 4 weeks, right? And for every week that I am late, I'll give the client 10% back, right? So there's a bonus for me if I do it on time. But if the client wants it faster, they can pay me extra. I'll have it done in 10 days, right? And I was working for myself anyway, so there's nothing on TV. You know, I charge an extra 30%. I do it in 10 days. Everybody's got no patience by that point. So every single £1,000 job was a £1,300 job because nobody wanted to wait 4 weeks. So I started to make good money doing that. And then I thought, right, okay, I'm making good money. Let's bring on a member of staff, which is where the thinking gets all screwed up again, because you're now chasing your tail to pay for the staff member you've just brought on. And then the whole ego thing comes into play again, where you're like, oh, I'm so successful, I've got 6 staff, and I'm making less money than when I was doing it myself. But that's the way it was when I was in a big engineering practice. I had a team, right? And it's not until later on that you start to look at the numbers and you're like, actually, I really like Bob, but Bob's costing me a fortune. I'm sitting there making me no money.
Yeah.
So Bob needs to go. Right, and eventually you start paying back how many people you've actually got. But it does take a little bit of a hit on your ego, because people perceive that you're doing less well because you're shedding staff, but you're making more money for you and your family.
That's it. And I think you have to weigh things up as a business owner yourself to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Like the ego thing comes in, but also the productivity of you yourself. If you're having to manage someone else's time or having to police people, then it's taking you away from what you're good at as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a deterrent then to scale up.
There is, yeah. And the same what we were talking about earlier on, we were saying that there comes a break point where you've got too much work for 4 staff, so you need to buy staff number 5, right? Or do you increase your fee by 10% and bring the workload down by losing poorer quality clients, right? And then you're making the same amount of money but doing fewer projects for a higher quality of client. That's another way of thinking about it as well, because when you start out, you'll just do everything. You'll do whatever work comes comes in, because you just want so much money in the bank as possible to feel secure, right? But then you get to the point where you're like, I'm dealing with these people who are phoning me up at 11 o'clock at night and 7 o'clock in the morning on a job that I did 2 years ago. They're not wanting to pay me because as far as they're concerned, they paid me 2 years ago for this. And you're like, look, mate, you paid me 2 years ago to get a building warrant, which you have, right? You're now on site. This is a construction part of it, which our original contract didn't cover. So if you want me to start answering these questions, you need to pay me for this extra service, right? Or you need to go and pay somebody else to do it, because I'm not able to do it for free.
Yeah, so is there a certain time period then that your contract obligates you to answer questions that they have, but obviously it would be related to the structural part and not so much the construction?
The construction part, it's normally about, basically the second they've got the building warrant, I'm out of there.
Right.
I get paid to get the building warrant, that's all. Anything after that, talking to the builder about the many changes they want to make, I can do that, but it's an extra fee, you know?
Quite right.
Because otherwise, you're just working for, you're a busy fool. You know?
Definitely, and I've heard that and I've experienced that myself. So at what point then have you started branching out of
engineering
in the sort of architecture type of industry?
I've probably about 2 years ago I started to think about, right, okay, 2 years ago I was 50, right, and I had a 2-year-old daughter, and basically the second my daughter was born, I started to think about, right, okay, what can I do that makes money that doesn't involve me trading my time for money, right? What exactly could that look like? So I've started and failed a lot of businesses. I had one business that was basically competing with my builder called Find My Plans, which was a website where people who wanted to do house extensions and things like that, but didn't have an architect or an engineer, would type in the description of works that they wanted to do, and I would send that off to a group of architects in that area and charge them like £10, £20 a month as a subscription to get work from me, right? And I do the same with engineers as well, although mysteriously a lot of the time I was the engineer, right? Because why would you not be, right? And when that started, I'd started advertising it, but obviously people had started to subscribe to the service.
Sorry, I just need to ask you, did you actually subscribe to yourself?
I don't think I did, no.
Okay.
What I did was I basically bought work off my builder and then resold it to the people that were subscribing to me. Right. So it was my builder and surveyors direct or something like that. I was buying work off and then reselling it to people, right? And that got to the point where the automation system wasn't working as well. So I was having to spend about an hour at night giving people contacts that I'd bought from this other thing in order to justify the £20 a month or whatever I was taking off them.
Right.
So it wasn't actually a passive income. I was making some money, but not passively. And the more it grew, the more time it was taking me to manually go away and forward these things. And so I shut the business down, but there are now automations like Trello and Zapier and things like that you could probably make that work now, right? I've moved on and done other things.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the first things that I tried to do. I created a cryptocurrency. I learned how to code and created a cryptocurrency, which did really, really well. But the problem with cryptocurrency is that people don't trust you, right? Because people get robbed all the fucking time, right? So if you create a cryptocurrency, you create a token which is backed by a larger established currency, right? So if I have 10,000 tokens that I want to sell you, I need to give them a monetary value, right? So I buy £10,000 worth of gold, say, right? And each of my token is worth £1 of gold, or the equivalent weight of that gold, right? And I give that gold to somebody else who is trusted with it, okay?
Right.
And then if the value of gold goes up, the value of my token goes up, right? Value of gold goes down, value of the token goes down, but the token itself can be traded. So you'll find that maybe in 2 years' time, your token's worth twice as much as the gold that's in the bank, right? But because people fundamentally don't trust you, they make you, as part of the creation process, put your gold, your liquidity into a crypto bank, right? So we had about 2 years of selling tokens, and I think the market cap of the token got up to something like £15 million. I owned about 10% of the tokens. That was my holding in it. It was going to be my pension. But what happened was the bank vanished. Like, literally, boom, not there.
What?
Right, so everybody, all the tokens that had put all the money in the bank, they all got robbed.
Oh my God.
So everybody's liquidity vanished. I switched my phone off, but I could show you what my stake is worth now. It's worth about, I don't know, about £100,000 or something like that, from
Right.
1 point something million. But for me to sell that, I would need to sell it from people who were also robbed by the bank. Right,
So-
and it was
So
shit.
what bank was it? Where was it based? Like, what was the sort of
It was a
setup?
crypto bank. It was a crypto bank that was suggested to me by it was a YouTuber who's still on it, and I don't know if he had anything to do with it. I suspect probably not, but
Right.
it was a bank called deeplock.com or deeplock.io, and I emailed everybody that held the token saying, look, the liquidity has been robbed by the bank. Here's a link to where the bank was, because all this stuff is all in blockchain, right? So everything's documented, so they can see I didn't take the money, and they can see that the stuff went to the bank and then went poof, right? So because all that stuff, you document it on the blockchain so that everybody has confidence that what you're doing is the correct thing. So they could see the bank vanishing, right? So I messaged everybody saying, look, there's still liquidity in PancakeSwap, right, which was another place that you could buy and sell. And there was a couple of exchanges that hadn't figured out that it was crashing. So I basically messaged everybody saying, look, sell what you have now, right? Because you're going to have a very short period of time before everybody else finds out liquidity's away. And there was just a mad scramble for people to go away and dump their stock.
My God.
But that was another failed venture.
A learning experience.
Yeah, that was a bit of a sore one, to be honest. I felt unbelievably bad for everybody who bought into it. But there's nothing, I don't know how to recover that kind of thing.
They're the risks that you take, though, with those types of things,
Yeah,
aren't they?
I know. I think most people had a few £100 in it, and that was nobody had lots and lots and lots of money. I had to put quite a lot, like tens of thousands of pounds worth of my money into it in order to make it a viable currency to start with. So that all got robbed. So I lost more than everybody else in it. But it was more just a case of, well, okay, that didn't work, let's go and find the next thing. So at the moment I'm selling a fishing product on Amazon and Facebook, which is patented so that nobody can copy the bloody thing. And it holds your waders open so you can step into them while still fishing.
Right, okay.
Right.
So I've heard it was actually designed by anglers for anglers.
Yes,
Is that
it
correct?
was. Yes, it wasn't designed by me. It was designed by one of my friends. He's left the company now. I think he got a bit fed up, to be honest with people. Facebook's a horrible place to kick about, right? So you sell something on Facebook and you advertise it on Facebook, and you get lots of people laughing at the advert and saying, "Oh, I'd pay £5 for this, not £17 for that." And you just have to go away and take it on the chin and go, "Look, I can't make it for that amount of money, right?
Yeah.
Let alone ship it to you and pay for a patent on it and stuff like that." So yeah, I'm sure you would buy it for a £5, but it's not possible for me to make for a £5. So all you have to do is go through the advert and just block people and delete comments and stuff like that, and try not to take it personally. We've got another product where we've got a steelwork fabricator that makes steelwork for us, and we sell it for strengthening your attic floor, which is more structural engineering than anything else. But we have, myself and Darren, my business partner for that, he's a contractor that does loft conversions. I'm an engineer who designs loft conversions. If you have modern houses, the first floor internal walls tend not to be load bearing, so your attic spanning from external wall to external wall, so it's a big span, and your trusses are made out of tiny little bits of timber, so they're not really designed to be converted into a living space. So you need to strengthen the floor, and a lot of the time you end up having to use structural steelwork to strengthen the floor, which is very expensive. Or there's another product out there that's been out there for 20 years, which is telescopic beams, which is like 3 times the price of our product, because we're not telescopic. We just use a measuring tape and get them the right length to start with.
Okay.
Right. And theirs is aluminium, ours is steelwork, but we're about a third of the price of the closest competitor. And for about 6 weeks there, we had no sales because Darren went on holiday and we stopped the Instagram adverts. So the sales stopped. No, that way you're like, I wonder what happens when you switch the adverts off.
Right, okay.
Yeah, nobody
That's
buys
what happens,
things.
yeah.
So now that we've switched the adverts back on, we've got inquiries coming back in. But that's another little thing that, at least that is a company that at some point I can sell. Unlike my main business where I'm doing bulletproof glass and things like that, this one I can sell because I can bring somebody else in to manage the day-to-day of it and get a graduate to go away and do the fairly notional, easy steelwork design that's involved in it. So in the future, that company can be sold. So the idea Darren and I both have is we'll get the company up to a certain level and then we'll just flog it and use that towards our retirement, because we're both around about the same age and we're like trying to look for an end game here. Whereas my main business, my consulting engineering business, we design curtain walling, blast resistant facades and bulletproof glass. And it's not really something that I can take me out of the business because I'm the person that does all that design. So it's not a business I can sell.
Right, so what would be your sort of main clientele then for that? Who would be looking for bulletproof glass?
Oh, you'd be surprised. Lawyers, software designers, accountants. It's not actually that difficult to make normal laminated glass into bulletproof glass, which is
Quite
weird.
interesting.
Bulletproof glass is basically laminated glass with different interlayers, right? But you can get a good level of blast resistance by just putting a PVB layer, a layer of acrylic or vinyl on the inside of the glass, so that when it blows up, it doesn't become shrapnel. It's just one big sheet, right? And you can put structural sealant around about it, so it just kind of flaps about like a big curtain, as opposed to doing a lot of damage to the people that are inside the building, because the building itself will be shredded, but what you don't want are the people inside the building to be shredded with it, right? So you don't want the glass to do the normal cube thing that it does and just become shrapnel. You want to stick it together, and it's not that difficult to do, to be fair.
So how bulletproof is it then?
Depends on, there's a whole section in one of the books that I've written. It really depends on the calibre of the gun and how far away it was fired. But you can get a good handgun level of bullet protection without replacing your actual glass by just adding interlayer like vinyl on the inside of it.
So is it only on one shot being fired, or if you were to shot numerous rounds, then
you're looking for about 3 shots. Most people tend to shoot 3 times, but most of that comes from American data. A lot of the design codes and things like that for bulletproof glass are American. Don't know how. But there just seems to be oddly an awful lot of additional data out there. But a normal shooter will get off 3 rounds before deciding it's time to leave. If they're just using a handgun. But most businesses will go to that level of protection. It's not that expensive to go away and do. If you're ground floor and you're an accountant and you fell out with one of your clients or something, you can protect your staff for not an awful lot of money, to be fair. And when it comes to like software, game designers and things like that, those companies are bigger than Hollywood studios these days. You know, I was in one last year where I'm not a big gamer, right? But every time I walked into the room, everybody turned their monitors off, so I couldn't see what they were working on. Right? And you're like, dude, I'm 50, I don't care.
But you'd be surprised though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, everybody switched off. It was like a big, massive secret. And I'm like, I'm happy that you think I care, but
I don't.
I'm not that bothered, to be honest. But yeah, I think some of that is ego, right? And some of it is to show their staff that they're protected, because if you're working in a very high level industry like that and you have the income, then you want your staff to feel as though they're protected as well. You know, it's like having healthcare, you know. At least the staff know that once they're inside the building, they're safe. There's big chunky security guards on the doors and things like that. You're not going to get some random person coming in, because terror is like, look at the rioting and things like that happened fairly recently all over the UK, right? That could happen to your business. You know, most of the glasswork that I design, right, to be honest, we have a lot of insurance for like curtain wall design and glass design and things like that. But see if there's a storm and your window's broken the next day, you're not likely to sue me. You're going to think a wheelie bin hit it, and you're going to phone your insurance company. So most of the insurance that I have for like curtain wall design and things like that, if there was a storm, I probably wouldn't be the person that people would actually be claiming against. They'd be looking at, well, it was really windy last night, what hit the window, you know, or who else did stuff. There's high-rise buildings in Glasgow. I'm not going to name which buildings they were, because they were in the newspaper not that long ago, where there was full panels of glass falling out of high-rise areas. Right? Now, the reason for that was that you've got 2 bits of glass and you have a little aluminium strip holding them in place, right? It's called a pressure plate. And at the bottom, the fixings in the pressure plates are at 600mm centres. But as you go higher up the building, it gets windier and you get higher wind pressure. And you're supposed to close the centres up. But what actually happened was that they got some school leaver to go away and do it. And he just went up the building doing everything at 600mm centres. Right? So everything was held in place until it was windy. And then you get local pressure and things start to bend because there's just not the fixings in it, because nobody checked.
So who's liable for that then?
It's just the
council? Or was it a private build? Or
well, the council would have given a building warrant, but the building warrant would have been signed off by an SCR certifier who takes personal liability for what he signed off. but the curtain walling would have been designed by somebody who was a specialist like me. So it all comes down to a finger pointing exercise. The specialist will have said, our drawing said, close up the centres, right? The contractor might not have been given the specialist drawings, because sometimes that happens, right? And they've got a spec that they just follow, so they just put it in whatever. It's legally, it's a total nightmare, because it will literally be people checking emails to see who sent who to what, who printed what out, and it was just such a silly mistake.
Was anyone injured?
I don't think anybody was injured, but it could have been bad.
Definitely.
But yeah, it's a bit of a minefield. That's why you have insurance.
Yeah.
Just in case something silly happens. Because building sites are a big place. It's easy for somebody to get halfway through checking something, then it's their lunch break, they're away going to something else, come back and they miss a bay or something like that. People make mistakes.
Yeah.
Human errors just happen all the time. And you have processes and things in place to stop that happening. But at the end of the day, you still have a person who's responsible for doing that job. So when we do our drawings for things, we tend to look at them at the point of view of, could a hungover 18-year-old build that on a Monday morning when they can't be arsed? Because that might be the person who's building it.
Yeah.
You just don't know. You might not have the top-notch A-team building it. You might just have somebody who's like, can't be bothered. What does the drawing say?
God.
But people do that a lot. And we try not to do anything in tenements, for example, because people who live in tenements think, I'm going to remove this wall, right? I'm going to put a kitchen in. I'm at the ground floor level. They forget that they're in a multi-storey building and there's 3 other families above them that's impacted by what they decided to do with their kitchen, right? So they will go away and they'll try and get an engineer, and the engineer will try and charge them a decent fee because they want to check the whole building, and the client will come back and go, you want that amount of money? I was thinking about 200 quid. Can you do it for 200 quid? And some little graduate somewhere will do it for 200 quid, right? And not visit any of the properties up above and not look in the basement to see if there's even a basement or a wall that they can put the load into. And that's how you end up with quite catastrophic failures, because people have hired a cheap engineer and then they've hired the cheapest builder they can get. Because I've written a book on this as well called As Safe as Houses, where the first page of it is literally, your house is the most expensive asset you will ever own, probably. So why is it you hire the cheapest people possible to work on it, right? Nobody goes to a rubbish dentist to get their teeth fixed, right? If you've been caught speeding and you're about to lose your driving licence, you don't get the cheapest lawyer to defend you, right? But when it comes to your house, everybody haggles with their builder, everybody haggles with their engineer. They'll haggle about 50 quid and then put a £40,000 kitchen in. Right, there's a level of arsehole thinking here that just blows my mind completely, where people will literally find the rubbishest professionals to work on their building, but it's the most expensive thing they will ever own.
And if it doesn't go well, then it's going to be catastrophic. And
the insurance company's not going to.
Yeah.
The insurance company won't cover it, because the insurance company will go, right, so what engineer did you hire? Oh, we've got a graduate to do it. So where's his insurance? Oh, he doesn't have any. Well, why would we fix it? You know, why are you looking at us to go and fix it? You're an actual grown-up.
Well, people that have that type of mindset's probably not thinking that far ahead, so that they would have the audacity to actually try and claim insurance on something that's not really claimable.
They will do. They'll try and claim it, and the insurance company will wrangle their way out of it. And then they'll be all over social media complaining about how such and such didn't fix their thing.
Yeah.
But we sometimes forget that the people we're dealing with are actual adults, you know, who are making grown-up decisions to not do things properly.
Yeah.
And then they're looking for other people to blame. It's a weird industry that are kind of working.
Yeah.
But you'll find that the same. Everybody will find that in their...
Yeah.
In their,
you do. It's just human behaviour, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And I think if you're wise, you tend to stay away from people like that.
Yeah. Well,
if not, you are one of those people. So.
Well, that's where the discussion about, do you just increase your fee a little bit so you're not dealing with the clients that are thinking that's acceptable? because those people are just a big risk to your business. Because even if you're not to blame, I get sued every so often. But I don't get sued every so often. I'm trying to think of a way of putting this. My insurance company will pay out on something that wasn't my fault rather than defend it. So I have to defend it. So I have to go and get a lawyer to say it wasn't my fault, so my insurance company doesn't pay out on a nuisance claim.
Right.
Because I don't want the claim against me, because it wasn't actually me that did it. Because obviously your premium goes up, but your reputation goes down as well. So you need to go away and demonstrate you weren't the one that fucked up.
I know, it's
and your insurance
time-consuming.
company's going, here, have 10 grand, and you're going, no, you're not getting to, no, I don't think so. It wasn't my mistake. But the insurance company just, below a certain threshold, a lot of insurance companies will just pay out. And that's actually quite useful for homeowners to know, right? If you have a claim on your house insurance and you are a pain in the arse, your insurance company will just pay you to fuck off. Like literally, right? If even if it's not something that really is claimable, rather than having to have the man hours allocated against arguing with you about it, they will eventually just pay you to go away.
Right.
Right? But you have to make a lot of noise to do that. But you do see people, I'll see people with no claim at all that are just noisy and they're all over social media and tagging people on X and on Facebook and stuff, and then suddenly they get a check that just says fuck off, right? And then you get somebody else who's got a legitimate claim, but it's all like kind of quiet about it. Like they actually have a problem, but they're expecting their insurance company to see that they have a problem, and the insurance company's like, nah, we're not fixing your house, it's sinking. We can see it sinking, but yeah, you're only emailing us. So, nah.
Yeah.
You know? And it's kind of heartbreaking, because you end up with the nice people are not getting their insurance paid out because the insurance companies are like, just too nice. You're never going to make a lot of noise. Yeah. And then the people who like have no claim are all over the place. All their pals are setting up petitions and stuff like that. And the insurance company's like, you're just too much hassle. You have some money and go away.
So that's like what you were saying about the quality and who you choose, like who you choose as a client, really.
Yeah.
I think when you go through things like that and you've been burned, then you can decide, right, there's a few alarm bells that are ringing here. I'm going to just say thanks, but no. Yeah,
you do get a bit of a kind of spidey sense for the people that you want to be dealing with, the people that are just like, you've not paid me anything, but you've already started emailing me at 10 o'clock at night and phoning at 8 o'clock at night and stuff. Like you're calling me at the weekend, right? Again and again. We're like, I'm sorry, but you're more hassle than the potential £700 you're worth.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's about just knowing what you're worth, in a sense of the headache. It's not even so much the money. You go, right, I'm not being egotistic. I just want to be headache free and not have to deal with these people, because usually it never tends to stop there, and you'll have the aftermath.
Some people will never be happy.
Yeah.
Like you could do the best job for them ever, and they'll still find something to complain about at the end, because it just seems to be in the way they think about things.
Yeah.
And then you've got other people who are so nice, right, and they'll leave you a lovely Google review, and you're like I was on the phone for like 5 minutes, right, and I didn't even do your job. I just told you that you didn't need me. You could go to Amazon and buy this thing. Right, and they're like, oh, you were lovely, and you sent me this, and you didn't take any money. So they'll leave a little Google review saying how helpful you were, and you're like, oh, cool.
But that helps you in business, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because obviously reviews sometimes are much more.
It's weird because I quite often forget to ask people to do Google reviews, but I will always look at them. And the same on Amazon, if you're buying stuff, you'll look to see how many 5-star reviews it's got. Oh, that's only got 33. That one there's got like 1,000. That must be better, right? And then you look at it, and the 1,000 all say like recently it's been rubbish.
I know, but you can take that too far as well, can't you? Because it's like it can paralyse you into not making a decision, because you go, no, I can't make a decision on this. Is it cost? Is it reviews? Is it quality? Is it?
Yeah, I know.
You know. So moving on from that, to discuss your books. So you've written 21 books.
Yes.
And is it 10, 11 Audible?
Yeah, the Audible books are great. It's, so I've written 21 books. Most of them are engineering based. They're like deeply boring for anybody who's not into engineering. But I have sidetracked. I wrote a book on finance for my niece and nephew, it was originally called Why Am I Skint Again? And then I changed it to Why Am I Broke Again? So that I could release it in America, because there's a lot more people in America, right? And it's all just things about little things like, you get to the end of the month and you're like, literally, why am I skint, right? I've not bought anything, I barely went out. Where the hell did all my money go? And a lot of the time it's went on things that you subscribed to and forgot you subscribed to, so they're just automatically coming off. Or how many TV subscription things you've got. You know, you've maybe got £100 worth of TV you're paying for and your TV licence, but you'll never watch Netflix. I find Amazon, the kind of TV side of Amazon, super confusing. Right, I don't know why. Right, but I just look at it and I'm like,
it used to be quite easy, functional, but
now
it's,
everything you have to pay extra for. But Netflix, I'm on most of the time. I'm on not so much Disney that much, but my daughter loves Bluey, so I can't get rid of Disney.
Right.
But it's just little things like that. You end up paying for subscriptions that you don't use. You pay for subscriptions you don't even realise you have. I closed down 5 Ionis accounts in the last week for Find My Plans, which I don't do anymore, but I'm still paying for the domain and email address and all the security to do with it. I had the cryptocurrency one as well, which I kept up so nobody else could have it. So I've still got the domain so nobody can set that up, because somebody else has set up a similar sounding cryptocurrency where people have started doing. I mean, there's nothing illegal about that. But I had a whole load of websites that are basically non-functional now that I was still paying for. And Ionis are quite clever because they don't tell you what your website is. The account is just a big random number, right? So you have to go into the account and then fiddle about for ages to try and figure out what that bill of £12 a month actually is. So I scrubbed all that. The other thing that is suggested in the book is that you obviously shop about for your insurances and things like that. It talks about how to get your interest rates down, how to consolidate your loans and things like that, how to use Experian. But mostly it's about all the little things that eat away that you don't realise that you're paying for because you basically just forgot about the bloody things. Or even just instead of making your own food, you're forever buying food in. That happened during COVID.
Yeah.
Right? People got to the point where there was no point going to supermarkets, there was nothing there. Right? So you were buying food in, and now people are just at the stage where they're in the habit of buying food in. So everybody's just on What's Eat and Deliveroo and things like that every single night. And the cost of that's obscene.
And when you break it down.
When you actually break down what you're getting, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Even if you were buying takeaways and phoning up the restaurant, you're saving £5.
Sorry, I've just had a memory. It was a flashback of it was a couple of years ago, and I'd ordered something from Just Eat, local place, and it was always really, really good, quite reasonably priced. I can't even believe I'm admitting this, but they had delivered it, and I was actually studying. I had exams coming up, so I thought, you know what, just get on with it, just focus on what you're doing, no time to stop. And it came. I was so hungry, and I opened it up, and I thought, oh, you beauty, when did it get tucked in? And it was like what I can only describe as either a fingernail or a toenail. But I know, but the thing is, it was too big to be a fingernail. And it was like, oh my God. And I was so disgusted. And I started typing in, complaint email and all that stuff. And you need to go through.
Onion or something like that?
No, it was a nail.
Oh, right, okay.
It was a nail. I never took it any further because there were so many hoops you had to jump through, and it had to be Just Eat, and you had to wait till they get back to you. And I thought, take pictures of it, where you got it, what you paid, what the receipt and all that. And I was like, do you know what? I'll just not order from there again. But the rest of it tasted nice.
It's good to know it didn't put you off your dinner then. Oh man, but no, there's so many things that we do nowadays. Going back to when you compared yourself when you were younger with people in your street and stuff like that. People buy cars that they don't need. I think my first car was like 250 quid or something like that, right? Whereas now everybody's first car's new. You know, it's maybe £250 a month, right? Nobody, I don't know how we ended up like what the
It's
hell
keeping
happened?
up with the Joneses, that's
But
what it
you're
is.
keeping up with the Joneses, but the Joneses live in California.
Yeah.
And like their dad was rich. Like they're not working.
Yeah.
There's people are paying one of the Kardashians at the moment on, I don't know, like some GoFundMe page so she can become the youngest billionaire in the US. And you're like, fuck,
I know, what does it mean?
hell?
Like, I know.
Like, people need to get a grip.
So just to kind of move on to the other books that you have,
Yeah.
then what are the other topics that you
Other topics
cover?
are, I've done one, the woke workplace, which is basically, I had written it with the intention of protecting employers from their employees, but oddly enough, one of the people that I sponsor at motorbike racing, the mum was talking to me and she's like, I've read that book and it's great, it's got all this stuff I can say to HR. I'm like, that totally wasn't what I wrote it for. But so obviously employees are reading it thinking this is what my employer should be doing, right? But it was actually written more from an employer's point of view to show you what your staff can do if you don't do certain things, because the workplace now has changed so much over the last decade that even just misgendering somebody is violence, right? Or asking people to work a little bit late is seen as being offensive. Like people are getting offended by being asked to work past their designated finishing time. And it's just like having employees is just a nightmare. You're basically just asking to get sued by somebody at some point, right? Because the amount of fail-safes that you have to have in place to make sure you don't misgender somebody or you don't somehow sexually harass somebody via email it's ludicrous, you know? And the HR department in the company, as an employee, as having been an employee, you think HR are there to act as an intermediary between the employer and the employees, but they're not. HR that are there to stop the employer getting humped by the employees, right? So it's more like an HR handbook on writing your list of your employee manual, if you like.
Policies and stuff.
Your policies and things like that. But the amount of policies that you have to have nowadays, even just myself, I need to have policies on diversity, discrimination, again, like race discrimination, handicap discrimination, all that kind of stuff, just to work for certain companies as a person who didn't have employees. Right, I need to have all these policies should I employ somebody, you know, just to tick other bigger companies' boxes, if you like, to show that if somebody comes to my office that it's wheelchair accessible, I'm not going to get offended by the colour of their skin or what religion they are or something like that. But the book is just full of potential minefields for employers, because the whole woke workplace at the moment is it's just a total nightmare to navigate. I don't know how larger companies, they must just have a full-time legal team.
Yeah, I think they will.
Or they're reacting to things as they pop up. Especially with the whole gender thing at the moment, that seems to be, over the last few years, obviously there's been trans people for centuries, like literally, you know. But nowadays, it just seems to be that I'm trying to think of a way of saying it that's not going to get me sued. I don't even know how to, like, why are you having to go away and put your pronouns in the end of an email address so people know? They know your name. Why do they need to know what your preferred pronouns are?
I think for me personally, it's not really an area I try and avoid getting involved in it, because it's so ludicrous to me to even be part of it, to discuss, to give it energy. But I think before this became like a more sort of current topic and a kind of accepted norm in society, not that it's not unacceptable, it's just labelling of any kind has never been a thing for me that I've been comfortable around. I don't like labels. I don't like being put in boxes and things. So that's just another layer of labelling that I don't really like. I just accept everyone for how they are and how they present, how they treat others. So if you're an arsehole, then you'll be treated the same way.
Pretty much.
You know, like it should just be give and take. It's like an energy exchange. So why have to give that energy to become something that it's not? These people they're so caught on these labels. And it might not be about gender, it might just be about even status labels, about, you know, I'm in this earning bracket, I look down on you because you're not. And like, I hate all of that stuff. And why has it become so, like, that's what we have to be?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'll call people by whatever pronoun they want to be called, but I don't want to be victimised if I've guessed wrong, right? Going back to Jodie, the girl that I sponsored, who's now Fent, right? Watching that transition happen, and in particular watching her father Garfield deal with it, because a lot of the time Garfield was the mechanic on every weekend, right? But Garfield would misgender Finn all the time because for 18 years that was his daughter, right? So for 18 years he had a little girl and now he's got a little boy, but every so often he would call her she when she's now a he and things like that, and he would get upset, like he would get upset because he's done that, and it was kind of heartbreaking for me to watch, because you're like, Finn wasn't bothered, right? And I'd do the same as well. I'd misgender him constantly because I'd known him only as a girl to start with. So it takes a little bit of time for the people around about you to realise what's happened and become, I don't know, it's not accustomed. Okay with it, but just accustomed to, you've changed your name, right? It'll be the same when people get married to a certain extent, where they've changed their second name and for about a year everybody still uses the same old email address or something like that. But getting all offended because somebody's done that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, I think it's like probably having a child. They're always going to be your baby. You'll always treat them, you'll always, not mollycoddle them, but you will always be protective over them. Yeah. And it's like when they become an adult, the worry doesn't stop. So I guess it's probably quite similar.
Yeah, but it's when other people start to get all offended on your behalf. It's like, oh, you went away and did this. And you're like, fucking,
you don't really care enough.
It wasn't on purpose. There wasn't any offence done. I don't know how comedians do at the moment, because the whole point of comedy is to offend half the people that are sitting there, right?
If not all, yeah.
If you're not offending people, you're not doing your job right. But you get people cancelled for tweets that they did 10 years ago. 10 years ago was a century ago now. I think the speed with which the human race is evolving and technology is evolving is exponential.
Would you call it evolving?
Well, not really evolving, but changing. Right?
Devolving.
Changing, yeah. The rate of change at the moment between the start of the 1980s and the end of the 1980s, and then the start of the 1990s and the end of the 1990s. 1990s were probably 3 times as fast as the 80s, right? And then the sort of 2000s up to 2010 was probably about 10 times the speed of the 90s. And now we're just going at like ludicrously fast.
That's rapid,
right? The society is changing on a week by week basis, and it's impossible to go away and keep up with what is happening, and that's part of what the woke workplace is written about. It's written about you're going to implement rules and things like that, and like in next month something else, you're going to have furries coming into your office or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with people who like to dress up like animals, but like there's things that.
Yeah, there's things that's acceptable and things that's not.
By allowing certain things to be the norm, you're now creating a new normal, which will then branch into a different type of normal. And at some point, you're going to get yourself into a situation where you're like, how on earth did we end up here? Right? Yeah. Because everybody's going to be broke. Nobody's going to own any houses. You're all going to be leasing a car. We might be paying per mile in the car that you lease, if that comes into effect. Everything's changing so quickly. It's difficult to go away and run a business at the same time as watching the world around you change. While at the same time trying to manage teenagers and people who are at school. What do you teach them about the modern world?
Definitely.
Right? Because by the time they've left school, it's going to be totally different from when they started high school. You know, it's very weird. So I've wrote that book. A lot of the other books are literally engineering books. I wrote 5 books that were just about 99 hacks for your marriage, your retirement and things, just hints and tips of things that you could do to make those things a little bit better, right? Because they were quite easy and enjoyable to write, to be honest. It was just a brain dump. But the actual process of writing the book, I find quite therapeutic. It takes spend about an hour at night doing it. It takes about 6 weeks or so to go away and write. It's not a particularly difficult process. The difficult process is just thinking of what you want to write it about. And there's not much, as I subscribe to lots of TV channels, there's not that much on TV. So the process for me anyway is come up with a subject that you want to write about, split it into 10 chapters, split each chapter into 3, and then split each of those sub-chapters into start, middle and end, right? So you're basically picking 10 core topics, breaking those down into 3 easier topics, right? So for example, ballistics class was the first chapter of Fortress Facade, right? So I talked about handguns, bombs, and what was the third thing? Basically the human impact of those 3 things. So the handgun, well, the actual ballistics part of it was the caliber of the gun that you could use, the types of actual bulletproof glass that you could use, and the interaction between those guns, that glass, and what it meant for the people inside. And the same with the next section, which was bombs, car bombs, personnel bombs, and how did you actually deal with the situation. So it's quite easy to go away and break a subject down into 3 discrete parts, and then just every night talk about one of those parts, right? But it's not too difficult to do, and then the book kind of flows together as long as you've got your chapter headings all together. Once you've done that, putting it onto Kindle and up on Amazon is actually quite an easy process. But what I discovered was you want to put it on Kindle first, not the physical book, because Kindle will grammar check it and spell check it for you automatically. Otherwise, you will do your physical book thinking it's okay, and then there'll be like 100 errors when you go and try and make it in a Kindle book, because Kindle will go, that doesn't even make sense. And you're like, oh, now I have to change the physical book. You know, but once you've got the 2 books up on sale on Amazon, they're just assets that sell. The trick is then to go away and advertise them to get them to sell. The first book that I did, which was As Safe as Houses, I put on Amazon, and it sold really, really well for the first few months, and I got an Amazon bestseller out of it. But then I didn't advertise it at all, and it just kind of like sat there, and you make a little bit of money selling 3 or 4 copies a month. But it doesn't actually cost an awful lot to advertise it, so it's on the front page when somebody types in like home, like DIY book or something. It doesn't cost an awful lot to get it to be on the front page. So books are a good passive income, I think, for people to create. I know everybody says that you've got one book in you. Right, you probably do.
I think everyone does, but it's just putting minds to matter to action, isn't it?
Actually doing it. The Audible books, you can get them on Audible. I figured that I listen to a lot of Audible books, so I figured Audible might be a good market. I only started Audible last month, and I made quite a lot of money in the month, but that was because I advertised absolutely everywhere. So I advertised my Audible books on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, absolutely everywhere. With the end result that I have not got a Scooby what actually worked advertising wise.
Right.
You know, so now I'm advertising the books. Last week it was only on X or Twitter. This week it's only on Instagram I'm going to advertise them, so I can try and see what it cost me per sale on those different platforms.
Yeah, like the data then you can capture to see what's effective and what's not.
But what I have figured out so far is that America buy books, the UK buy audiobooks, right? So if I'm selling the same thing in the UK, it's costing me 3 times as much to sell a book in the UK as it is in the States, right? So for the same amount of money, I'm selling like 6 times as much in the States as I am over here for this exact same Amazon advert, which is weird.
Yeah.
And it makes no difference to me where it gets sold, because all that happens is Amazon send a PDF of the book to the local printer who prints it out and ships it to you. It doesn't make any difference where in the world it is.
So there's no sort of transportation, shipping or anything required, like sort of internationally?
No, it just gets posted in whatever country it gets manufactured and posted in whatever country you are. There's no big, massive bank of books somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Wow. When you think about writing a book, you're not just thinking about writing the book, you're thinking about all the milestones and the barriers that are in your mind to get there, to become like a bestseller or to become known as an author or a writer. So I think that's what puts a lot of people off.
It took me about a year to write the Unseen Green, which is a book on climate change. That took about a year to research that, because I didn't know an awful lot about climate change. I was interested in it, but I knew nothing about it. So it took about a year to research that. And now that I've actually finished the book, I can't advertise it anywhere because it's seen as political. Right, so every time I tried to put it on Facebook, it's like, oh, you can't advertise, political. Right, I tried it on Instagram, political, and you're like, oh, what? It still sells. I don't know
Everything's
how.
political.
But and I've tried wording it. I tried another advert actually just yesterday where in the video it says, you know, taking politics out of it, these are the facts, right? But putting politics into the advert probably makes it political.
Yeah.
You know, so that ad will probably get banned. But I find it quite enjoyable, and once the asset's created, it's just an asset that will make money. It's just a case of trying to figure out who to sell it to and how to sell it.
Yeah.
It's the same with the Wadeez on Facebook. We have a physical product that's manufactured. There's lots involved in the manufacturing process. I don't know if I'll do a physical product again. I'll probably do another digital one because it's just a thing that's out there. But again, now that it's made, it's just a case of finding a price point, selling it and making a little bit of profit. It doesn't have to make a lot of profit. It just needs to tick away making a passive income in the background so that you have money coming in that didn't involve you having to spend your time doing it.
So just to kind of tie up then, because I think we're probably going to have, hopefully, another interview where we can go a wee bit more in depth into other areas that I'm very interested in, that you have a lot of experience in. But just to kind of tie up, to give a message away for people who are maybe considering going out and starting business or entrepreneur sort of mindset, what would you advocate that's useful, learning from the experiences that you've had? What would you, for example, if it was your daughter, what would you tell her to avoid, or what would you say to encourage her to go into?
I don't know. It's quite a wide-ranging question. I think don't be afraid of trying something, right? If you have a problem and you have found a solution for it, then other people have that same problem, right? And other people are looking for that solution, right? So if you've found an issue and you know how to fix it, then try and find some way marketing that, right? It might be that you're reselling someone else's product. It might be that you've made a new product yourself, but don't be afraid of trying to make it happen, because there's nothing worse than regretting not trying it. Like even if you go away and spend a couple of £1,000, just like we were saying on the way down here, I've had a lot of businesses that started and failed, and you maybe spend 2/3 of them will fail quite quickly, right? And you've spent £2,000 setting up a business and it's fell flat in its face. Then you spent £2,000 setting up that business, it fell flat in its face. But on the fourth one, you spent £2,000, you made 10 grand, right? You've now made 10 grand, so you're up. But you've now created a business that might make you 10 grand again next year. And you might be able to tweak it and make that into a £20,000 business, because you now have a viable idea that people are buying. So what you need to do is as quickly as possible, try and find out if you have a marketplace for whatever your product is, right? Try and advertise it so that you can get as much interest as possible so you know it's viable. And then once you know it's viable, you then have a product, right? As long as it's not taking up too much of your time. Like the Find My Plans thing, that would work, but it was just taking up too much of my time. And then I was competing against too many big, already established companies. At the moment, I have a survey business that I'm going to start to advertise on Clyde One, because I can do a survey in the morning, write a report in the afternoon, and the amount of money that I can get from that is about the equivalent of doing somebody's house extension that might take 2 or 3 days. So my rate per hour is higher doing the survey business. Is it going to be worth doing radio ads? I don't know, but I'll see.
Yeah,
you know?
try it.
Ask me in a month's time, let's see. But I think people just need to go away and not be fearful of trying stuff. But if you're going to try stuff and you're going to ask people for advice, ask the right people for advice, because a lot of the people that you think are on your side aren't actually on your side. Your family and your friends and things like that, they might not want you to do better than them, right? Which is a horrible thing to say, right? But they might not want you to do better than them, or they might just have an opinion on something, but they don't know, right? So if you want advice off somebody who's already done that, something like that before, you don't want to be going to an employee and asking them, I want to start a business doing such and such, because they've got no experience in that. All they have is an opinion. They don't have knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? It's like asking somebody who's heavily in debt how to save.
Yeah.
Right? They don't know how to save, they just know how to spend money and get into debt. Right? So you need to find somebody who's actually saved, or somebody who's, if you want to buy a buy-to-let property, go and talk to somebody who already buys buy-to-let properties to find out, or a mortgage broker, somebody who knows about that. Don't ask somebody who rents, because they're at the wrong end of the kind of food chain.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid of trying stuff, because you never know. Your daft idea might actually become something.
Yeah, it might be the one.
You know, but you need to have a little bit of staying power, because even things like Amazon didn't make any money for like 13 years, right? And that guy started off with a massive amount of money for his mum and dad to set up Amazon. It's not like, it's not like he started for his garage and had no money. He started with a $250,000 loan for his mum and dad, and then made no money for 13 years before it started to kick off.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes you need to.
And the perseverance.
You need to have the belief in what you're doing, I think.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yep. Cool.
Thank you very much.
No bother.
It would be good to get another
yeah,
chat
we can
with
do
you.
This again. Yeah.
And catch up with you on where you're at.
We'll see how the adverts are going for the books and things like that.
Yeah, I'll really look forward to seeing how it progresses.
To do.
Thanks very much, Chris.
No problem at all.